Have you ever stopped to wonder where your entertainment comes from? It feels like a vast ocean of choices. Millions of songs on a streaming service, thousands of movies available at the click of a button, a universe of games waiting to be played. But what if this ocean is not as wide as it appears? What if many of the currents are guided by a single, powerful hand? That hand often belongs to a company you know well, but whose true reach you may not fully appreciate. This company is Sony. It is one of the quiet architects of your media world, shaping what you hear, what you watch, and what you play. Sony's influence is woven into the very fabric of popular culture. It is not just a brand name on a television or a camera. It is a sprawling empire with three powerful pillars: Sony Music, Sony Pictures, PlayStation. Each division stands as a giant in its industry. They influence the song of the summer. They influence the biggest blockbuster movie. They influence the most anticipated video game of the year. The choices you make every day, the playlist you stream, the film you watch on a Friday night, the game you immerse yourself in, are often choices presented to you by this single corporate entity. This is not a conspiracy. It is simply the modern reality of the global entertainment business. A few massive corporations have consolidated immense power. Sony is a prime example. The company's strategy is not hidden, but its effects can be subtle. It creates a landscape where endless variety conceals a common origin. This leads to a fundamental question about our digital lives. When one company owns the artists, the movies, and the platforms, how much real choice do we truly have? The answer is often less than we think. In this exploration, we will look closely at how Sony operates. We will examine the sheer scale of its music labels, film studios, and gaming division. We will see how these components work together, promoting each other's content in a seamless loop of corporate synergy. We will also touch upon the controversies and criticisms that have followed the company, from antitrust concerns to massive data breaches. The goal is not to be dramatic or preachy. It is to present the facts in a clear and steady way. The truth is that the choice you believe is entirely your own is often an illusion, carefully crafted and sold to you. Let's begin with music. Sound is a powerful, emotional force in our lives. Sony Music Entertainment is one of its most dominant gatekeepers. It stands as one of the big three record labels, a small group that controls a vast majority of the global music market. When you listen to the radio, browse a popular streaming playlist, or watch the music charts, you are witnessing Sony's influence in action. The company's roster is a who's who of superstardom: Beyoncé, Adele, Harry Styles, Doja Cat. The power of a major label extends far beyond signing artists. It's about control over the entire music distribution ecosystem. Sony has immense leverage in negotiations with streaming services like Spotify, Apple Music. Those deals determine royalty rates. They also influence which artists get featured on prominent playlists. They affect which songs are recommended by algorithms. They decide which new releases receive major promotional pushes. A spot on today's top hits can mean millions of streams overnight. Sony's marketing muscle positions its artists to capture that attention. That makes it incredibly difficult for independent artists to compete. Market dominance has led to concerns about competition. Critics and regulators have questioned whether power concentration creates an unfair environment. This is the heart of antitrust concerns in music. When a few companies control the world's popular music, they can set market terms. That affects what listeners hear and how artists are compensated. Complex, opaque contracts between labels and artists have long been contentious. Many creators feel they receive only a small fraction of generated profits. Sony fiercely defends its intellectual property. Its vast catalog is an enormous financial asset, protected vigorously. This often takes the form of takedown notices on platforms like YouTube, fan-made content, cover songs, video essays. Critics say aggressive enforcement can stifle creativity and fair use. For Sony, copyright is also a major revenue stream. Licensing to movies, television shows, commercials, games further cements its financial power over the sonic landscape. Now, let's turn our attention to the silver screen. Sony's influence here is just as profound. Through Sony Pictures Entertainment, the company is a major player in Hollywood, responsible for producing and distributing some of the most recognizable films and television shows in the world. When you see the iconic Columbia Pictures logo before a movie, you are watching a Sony product. When you see the iconic TriStar Pictures logo before a movie, you are watching a Sony product. The studio's power is most visible in its blockbuster franchises. Think of the web-slinging adventures of Spider-Man. Think of the jungle escapades of Jumanji. Think of the paranormal comedy of Ghostbusters. These are not just movies. They are massive multi-billion-dollar properties. They spawn sequels, they spawn merchandise, they spawn spin-offs. It is far less risky for a studio to invest hundreds of millions of dollars in a new Spider-Man movie. It is far more risky to bet on an original, unproven idea. This economic reality shapes the entire creative pipeline. Studios like Sony pour their largest budgets and marketing resources into these established franchises. That ensures they dominate the box office and the cultural conversation. As a result, smaller, more original films often struggle to find funding and distribution. This focus on franchises has drawn criticism from within the film industry itself. Directors express worry, writers express worry, critics express worry. They argue the relentless pursuit of sequels and cinematic universes has led to a homogenization of mainstream cinema. The creative choices are often driven by market research and the need to appeal to the broadest possible global audience, which can sand down the unique edges of a story. While these films can be incredibly entertaining, the consolidation of power means a few corporate executives at companies like Sony are making the big decisions. Those decisions have an outsized impact on which stories get told and which voices get heard on a global stage. Beyond new productions, Sony Pictures also owns a vast library of thousands of classic films and television shows. This catalog is an incredibly valuable asset in the age of streaming. It allows Sony to license its content to services like Netflix. It allows Sony to license its content to services like Disney+. It allows Sony to populate its own streaming platform, such as Sony Live. This gives the company a steady stream of revenue and ensures that its older properties remain relevant to new generations of viewers. The control over this library means Sony can decide where and when you can watch timeless classics, a powerful gatekeeper of both present and past cinema. The third pillar of Sony's empire is perhaps its most interactive: gaming. The PlayStation brand is a household name, a dominant force that has shaped the video game industry for decades. From its revolutionary debut in the 1990s to the cutting-edge technology of the PlayStation 5, Sony has built more than just a console. It has created a comprehensive digital ecosystem with over 100 million active users. Control the platform, control the content, you control the market. Sony achieves this through its network of first-party studios and a relentless focus on exclusive games. Naughty Dog, The Last of Us, Santa Monica Studio, God of War, Insomniac Games, Marvel's Spider-Man. These studios produce high-quality, critically acclaimed games only on PlayStation. This strategy effectively forces the hand of consumers. If you want to play these titles, you must buy a PlayStation. This drives console sales. Game purchases feed the ecosystem. Subscriptions lock players in. Digital transactions keep money flowing to Sony. This closed platform approach lets Sony exert financial control. Sony dictates the price of consoles, the price of games, and the price of subscription services like PlayStation Plus. Critics call out higher next-gen game prices and controversial subscription changes. Sony says it's to cover rising development costs, but it highlights the power Sony holds over a captive audience. When you buy a digital game from the PlayStation Store, Sony takes a substantial cut, typically 30%. That revenue model has drawn scrutiny from developers and regulators. This control has not come without challenges. One of the most damaging events was the 2011 PlayStation Network hack. Names, addresses, potentially credit card information. The network was offline for nearly a month. Consumer confidence was shaken, and the company faced class action lawsuits and regulatory fines. The incident showed the vulnerabilities of a centralized platform and the immense responsibility Sony has to protect millions of users. It underscored the risks of trusting a single corporate gatekeeper. Individually, Sony's music, film, and gaming divisions are corporate giants, but their true power is realized when they work together. This is the principle of corporate synergy, and Sony is a master of it. The company strategically leverages its assets across all three pillars to create a self-reinforcing loop of promotion and profit. This intricate web of cross-promotion is designed to feel natural to the consumer, but it is a calculated business strategy. Consider a typical example. Sony Pictures releases a new blockbuster movie, a film in the Spider-Man universe. The official movie soundtrack, released by Sony Music, will feature songs from major artists on Sony's labels. That lead single receives a massive promotional push on radio and streaming services, driving listeners to the song and to the movie. Simultaneously, a video game adaptation or a special in-game event launches exclusively on PlayStation, developed by a Sony gaming studio. The movie, the music, the game all promote one another, creating a powerful marketing engine that maximizes exposure and revenue. This synergy creates an illusion of choice. When you scroll a streaming service, you see thousands of artists and labels. When you browse a movie platform, you see hundreds of studios and production companies. But behind the curtain, many of these entities are owned by the same parent corporation. You might think you're choosing between a song by Beyoncé, a movie from Columbia Pictures, and a game from Naughty Dog, but you're consuming 3 products from the same source: Sony. This concentration narrows the field of competition. This integrated approach gives Sony an enormous advantage. It can launch a new property with a built-in multi-platform marketing campaign that independent creators could never afford. A new artist signed to Sony Music might have their song placed in a popular Sony TV show, giving them exposure to millions. A new PlayStation game might feature a trailer cut by Sony's movie marketing department. This ecosystem keeps Sony's content front and center, pushed through its powerful channels. It's designed to keep you in the Sony universe, moving you seamlessly from one product to the next. No company of Sony's size and influence operates without facing significant controversy. Over the years, its aggressive business practices, security failures, and market dominance have attracted criticism from consumers, creators, and regulators. These incidents are not just isolated problems, they are cracks in the armor. They serve as important case studies, showing what can happen when one company holds so much sway over what we see, hear, and play. These controversies span Sony's 3 major divisions: music, Hollywood, and gaming, highlighting systemic issues across its entertainment empire. In music, disputes over artist compensation and copyright enforcement. One notable controversy involved the use of rootkit software on music CDs in the mid-2000s. To prevent illegal copying, certain Sony BMG CDs installed hidden software on users' computers without their knowledge. This software not only monitored their listening habits, but also created security vulnerabilities that could be exploited by malicious viruses. The ensuing public outcry and class action lawsuits forced Sony to recall millions of CDs and served as a powerful lesson in corporate overreach and the violation of consumer trust. In Hollywood, Sony Pictures has faced its share of public relations crises. The most infamous was the 2014 hack, widely attributed to North Korea, in retaliation for the movie The Interview. This devastating cyber attack resulted in the leak of massive amounts of sensitive data, including unreleased films, executive emails, employee salaries, and personal information of actors. The leaked emails exposed embarrassing and often unflattering private conversations among top studio executives. The hack was a major blow to the studio's reputation and a stark example of the geopolitical risks of modern media. In gaming, beyond the PlayStation Network hack, Sony has faced ongoing criticism for what many perceive as anti-consumer practices. This includes raising the standard price of its flagship video games, its firm control over digital sales and refunds on the PlayStation Store, and its historical resistance to cross-platform play. While the company has since softened its stance on some of these issues, they reflect a business model that prioritizes locking consumers into its proprietary ecosystem. These controversies, taken together, paint a picture of a corporation that will aggressively protect its market position, sometimes at the expense of its customers and partners. Of all the controversies Sony has faced, none was as publicly damaging, as far-reaching as the 2011 PlayStation Network hack. This was more than a technical failure. It was a breach of trust. In April, Sony admitted an external intrusion had compromised its online gaming network. Approximately 77 million accounts were affected. Names, addresses, email addresses, birth dates, login credentials. Possible credit card data may also have been taken. Sony shut down the PlayStation Network and its Curiosity music service for 23 days. unable to play games online, unable to access the digital store, unable to use network features. The outage caused immense frustration worldwide. Users felt betrayed. Sony's slow, unclear communication made it worse. Governments and data protection authorities scrutinized Sony. Investigations were launched and regulators fined the company in several countries. Class action lawsuits followed. Sony offered a welcome-back package: free games, 1 year of identity theft protection. Costs, security upgrades, legal fees, recovery programs totaled hundreds of millions. The 2011 hack is a landmark in cybersecurity and consumer rights. It exposed the vulnerability of centralized systems. For consumers, a wake-up call about personal data. For Sony, a forced overhaul and a lasting reputational scar. Beyond high-profile hacks, Sony's power has drawn quieter but persistent scrutiny in the realms of law and regulation. Two key areas of concern are antitrust issues, copyright enforcement. Antitrust laws are designed to prevent any single company from gaining so much market power that it can stifle competition and harm consumers. In an industry like music, where Sony Music, Universal Music, Warner Music collectively control the vast majority of the market, whispers of anti-competitive behavior are never far away. Regulators in both the United States and Europe have periodically investigated these major labels. The investigations often focus on the deals the big three strike with streaming services. These agreements can be complex and are rarely made public, but they can shape the entire digital music landscape. Critics argue the major labels use leverage to secure favorable terms that independents cannot access. This can include higher royalty rates, guaranteed promotional placements, equity stakes in streaming companies. That creates a system where the biggest get bigger, making it harder for new and independent voices. It raises questions about fairness and access in the digital age. On another front, Sony has earned a reputation for aggressive copyright enforcement. The company owns an immense catalog of music and film, and it uses automated systems and legal teams to police how that content is used online. This has led to countless clashes with creators on platforms like YouTube. A video essayist using a few seconds of a movie for critique, a musician performing a cover, or a home video with a copyrighted track can be hit with a claim. This can result in the video being taken down, the audio being muted, or ad revenue being diverted to Sony. Sony says it's protecting assets and artists' livelihoods. Critics say it can stifle expression. Fair use allows limited use for criticism, commentary, education. But fair use is often a casualty when automated systems flag content without understanding context. This ongoing battle highlights the tension between corporate rights and public creative freedom in the digital commons. When we boil it all down, the central issue is the power of ownership. Sony's story is a clear illustration of how owning the means of production and distribution translates into real-world influence. For creators, musicians, filmmakers, game developers, partnering with a corporate giant like Sony is a double-edged sword. On one hand, it offers access to unparalleled resources. Sony can provide the funding to produce a multi-million-dollar album, a blockbuster film. It has the marketing machine to promote that work to a global audience and the distribution network to get it onto every screen and speaker in the world. However, this access comes at a price. Creators often have to sign complex contracts that cede a significant amount of control and a large percentage of future earnings to the corporation. In the music industry, artists have long complained about opaque accounting and low royalty rates, especially from streaming. In film, directors may find their creative vision compromised by studio executives focused on maximizing box office returns. In gaming, developers acquired by a large publisher may be pushed to incorporate monetization strategies they disagree with. The balance of power is heavily tilted in favor of the corporation that owns the intellectual property and controls the purse strings. For consumers, the effects are more subtle, but just as significant. The concentration of ownership leads to a less diverse media landscape. When a few companies like Sony decide which projects get funded, they tend to favor safe bets and proven formulas. Sequels, remakes, franchise extensions, and why the music charts are often dominated by a handful of megastars backed by major labels. Original ideas, risky ideas. Unconventional ideas have a much harder time finding a platform. The choice we are presented with is often a choice between different flavors of the same corporate-approved product. This power of ownership also extends to access. Sony decides the price of a PlayStation game, the subscription fee for its services, and which movies are available on which streaming platforms. Through exclusive deals, it can dictate which content you can access depending on the hardware you own. This creates walled gardens, forcing consumers to invest in specific ecosystems to enjoy the content they love. The ultimate result is a market where true competition is limited, and the consumer has less leverage. The power of ownership means that Sony is not just selling you a product, it is selling you access to a culture that it largely owns and controls. The story of Sony is the story of modern entertainment. It is a story of immense scale, technological innovation, concentrated corporate power. We have seen how its arms in music, film, and gaming do not operate in isolation. They work in concert, creating a powerful ecosystem that shapes what we experience every day, from the songs that become the soundtrack to our lives, to the movies that define our cultural moments, to the games that we lose ourselves in. Sony's influence is pervasive. It is not malicious. It is business. But it is a business that has a profound effect on our culture. The central claim remains: the feeling of limitless choice is, in many ways, an illusion crafted by a marketplace, where a few powerful gatekeepers own the content, and also own the primary channels that deliver it to you. This is not a call to stop listening to Sony artists, or stop watching Sony movies, or stop playing PlayStation games. Many of these creations are genuinely brilliant, made by thousands of talented people. It is a call to be more aware of the structure beneath the surface. What can a person do? First, pay attention. Be a conscious consumer. When you listen to a song, watch a movie, or play a game, take a moment to notice who made it, who distributed it, who owns it. Read the credits. Look up the studio or the record label. Understanding the corporate structures is the first step to seeing the whole stage, not just the show. Develop a literacy of the business of culture. Beyond awareness, make choices that support a more diverse, open market. Seek out independent artists on platforms like Bandcamp. Watch films from smaller, independent studios. Play games from indie developers pushing creative boundaries. Support journalism that investigates these corporations and demand transparency. Your individual choices may seem small, but collectively, they can send a message. The power of a company like Sony is immense, but not absolute. It relies on our attention and our money. Knowing how it works is the first step toward holding that power to account.